favorite part.
What's Isaiah Collier missing by just not playing these first 20 days?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things situationally that happen in games. We try to go over a lot in practice, but things are so unpredictable in a game. I think the mental part of that you can't replicate. You can try. You also can't replicate the feeling of playing in your first NBA game, full arena, all of the stress and like legitimate physical feelings that come with that. Also the regular season is different than the preseason. The intensity is cranked up. The game plans are more detailed. The margin for error is smaller, and so every opportunity that a young player gets to take the court, they get to feel things that they could never feel in a practice or even in a preseason game.
Talking to Cody, he said it didn't really feel much different in a regular season game versus a preseason game. Is that like a good mentality to have, and how does that kind of help him?
Yeah, I mean, I think staying even keel and not being overwhelmed is a good thing. If that's how Cody feels, that's how Cody feels. That would be shocking to me, if I'm honest. But I think it's good that Cody's not, he hasn't been like a deer in headlights since he's gotten here. In practice, in scrimmages, in games, he's just a pretty level-headed person. I don't know if I've ever seen him really show much emotion. He has a great sense of humor, very dry. But I guess that's just his temperament. I think it will serve him well in the long term because if you ride the emotional roller coaster of an NBA season, it can become overwhelming. So hopefully he can maintain that perspective as the season and as his career go on.
Last night, in the last few minutes, you toggled kind of between Keyonte and Collin and Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
What was the thinking there as you kind of changed between those guys?
Yeah, I mean, Jordan had a great second half. In particular, he had been moving the ball great. Keyonte had really struggled to that point in the game. And so took him out and went with Collin for a little bit to see if we could find something there. And then executing down the stretch, I felt confident with Keyonte going back to him and hoped that the couple of minutes just sort of sitting down and taking a breather could maybe help him reset. But, there's those decisions are made in the moment based on conversations with the staff, and a lot of it is a gut feeling. We're not necessarily using stats to make those decisions at this point in the season. But, I felt pretty good about how it was going. We missed a few free throws. They made a couple of tough shots, which, that's kind of how the end of the games can go sometimes. But, I've done this with you guys a bunch and the team. It's ultimately, being flexible with how you think about the end of a game. Not every end of game is going to have the same group out there. We're trying to figure out what, based on has happened in the game that night, who we're playing, matchups, schemes, who we think is the best group to finish, and obviously it didn't work out last night.
And then wanted to ask about, Taylor, you said gained 20 pounds. Walker said told us last night 19, 20 pounds. That seems to have brought real progress in their games. There are some that would say you don't want to add too many pounds so they lose mobility, right? I think that's a concern. As you guys work through that, how do you determine what target weight you want someone to be?
I don't who's talking about their weight and their mobility.
Not, I guess, not with those guys in particular, but as you develop players.
Oh yeah, no, I get that. That's where we have we've got 6 people that work for us who have 47 degrees. That's their expertise, and I come to them and we meet with, I usually have general thoughts, and that's based on observations of their play. Then you have conversations with the player, you explain why, and then you go to the experts for how best to execute that plan. In no way did I ever say they need 20 more pounds. It's they need to be physically stronger so that they can endure the physicality of the positions they play. Hopefully that helps them endure the season. And our, health performance team, along with the player, put the plan together. There's a lot of moments where I'm interacting with them where they're steering the ship. I'm making basketball observations, and it's always going to be kind of a collaborative conversation. It's not just myself and the health performance staff. The player is involved in that as well. And I do agree with you. There's moments where too much is too much, and so we don't think that this is like the end game for either of those guys. There's a world where you could add more. There's a world where you need less. We're going to see how the beginning of the season goes, see how their bodies respond, and go from there.
Last night, Keyonte maybe didn't have the game that he wanted, and he might be a little hard on himself at times. You can see through the game.
Mm-hmm.
He's a competitor. That's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
How do you go about navigating that with just not even Key, but just athletes and kind of what we've talked about, just getting back to the next play and that next mentality?
Yeah, I think there's a line. Like, I don't think emotion is bad. I don't think frustration is bad. That's very real, especially in young athletes. But I do think there's times where your emotions are they're running the show, and that's not what we want. We can't get so wrapped up in what's already happened or the frustration or the anger. And my responsibility in that is to maybe point that out at different times, to give a perspective from the outside of what you may be appearing. But that's always, it's a fine line, because like I don't feel what they feel, and I know that. I feel pressure and anxiety and all those things in my own way during the game. So I'm never going to be one to sort of like point fingers at them. My job is to try to help them perform their best. And so I feel like I know Keyonte way better now than I did a year ago. And so I feel like I have a better understanding of how to approach him in a game and then how to approach him in between the games. We finished last night, and my mindset in general is, how do I get the team from post-game last night to tip-off tomorrow night and have the team be in the best collective mindset we can be in. It doesn't matter how the game goes. 18 guys aren't leaving happy. So there's always things that need to be tuned up and adjusted, but I think that's honestly the fun part, the interesting part of the job, is that it's not a cookie-cutter formula for like how to get any athlete kind of back to level, because they all respond differently to different things. And I'm always trying to learn them better. I have no doubt that Keyonte was frustrated, and can we do a better job like recalibrating in the game? I think so. He's an example of that individually. There's different nights, it's different guys individually, but it's really ultimately about like the team. Can we work through the emotion quickly? Feeling the emotion is great, but we've got to get to the next thing and sort of let the emotion pass and see if we can get our focus back.
Along those lines, do you feel like there are things you learned from Walker last year that you could apply to Keyonte in his sophomore season? or there are things you learned from Taylor and Bryce that you can apply to Kyle and Isaiah?
Yeah, absolutely. The hope is that I'm not the only one learning from those things, that they can learn from them too, that their teammates can talk to them and say, hey, I went through the same thing you're going through. Like, I came in with expectations of X, Y, and Z, and it didn't quite work out that way to start, but I put the work in and I trusted in the plan that was there for me. I trusted that the plan was like really deeply thought about. Is the plan perfect? It never is, but the amount of time and thought that goes into these things by not just me but our whole organization, hopefully the players feel that, and that it's not something where they think that we're shooting from the hip. So yeah, I'm always learning from players and what their process and plan was, how they responded to it. But the hope is ultimately, that's kind of where the veteran leadership and the being a teammate comes into play, because you can look at somebody in their rookie year and go, dude, I went through the same thing, and like, here I am and I'm doing great, and trust that you're going to get through it. I think shared experiences among athletes and players is always going to carry more weight than something a coach says, because they see it and they're going to trust that more, because it's a real tangible thing. I'm talking in theory when I talk to them, because I haven't walked in their shoes.
You mentioned yesterday about the importance of Lowry punishing mismatches.
Mm-hmm.
There weren't many opportunities of that yesterday, but he was getting top blocked a lot by Marcus Smart.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something you guys are emphasizing, him getting backdoor for those alley-oops, or something just naturally him reading the game? Yeah,
we work a lot on top block. Lowry sees it a lot. JC sees it the second most. First look is a lob, especially with Lowry because of his size. It was harder to get the lob when the 5 was setting the screen, because it sort of puts X5 right on top of Lowry. I think we got one of them with the 5 there. The other ones, the 5 was on the other side of the court where they can't recognize it quite as quickly. Doesn't mean that it won't get snuffed out at times, but not every team top locks with smalls. Sometimes they do it with only the 5. So, the team did a really good job of recognizing that. We assumed that they were going to top lock Lowry. I would assume we're going to see a lot of top lock this year with him. He's proven that when he comes off of screens that he's really effective. So it's something that we drill multiple times a week, watch film on, because there's a bunch of guys on our team that'll see it.
Yes, last night we got a chance to run a portion of your pregame message, which we appreciate being able to be in the locker room and get that. And the part of the message was, when things are going well, you give to this group. When it's rough for you, then that's when you come to this group. Mm-hmm. How are you seeing that manifest itself with this group right now?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the essence of the team. Nobody on the outside is going to help us. No one's going to save you. It's all kind of within the group. I think that's where, there's moments in the game where that shows up. I think that's also kind of what Ben was asking about, where a player has a shared experience and maybe they're not getting what they want, and so they're struggling a little bit. They go to the group to find the energy to get through it. And that could be a teammate saying, like, hey, I've been through the same thing. I don't think it's going to the group when it's not going well is hard. Sometimes I also think that we don't emphasize enough that when it is going well for you, you need to give to the group. Like I said, 18 guys aren't happy all the time. It's impossible. So we're always trying to sort of pick each other up to stay as high as we can. There's days that our staff does that. Sometimes I'm picking the assistants up. Sometimes they're picking me up. I think that's kind of any relationship in general. So it's something that we have to talk about a lot during the year. It's something that you have to kind of continue to point at, because we don't want that to become out of sight, out of mind, especially as the season really gets rolling. It's very easy to get wrapped up in your own little world and how it's going for you and sort of forget about the group feel of it. And this is a team sport. And I think that's where, when you feel like you belong, when you feel like you're a part of a group, a family, or whatever you want to call it, there's a lot of comfort in that. And so we want to try to continue to create that feeling every day.
Good.
Thank you.
Thanks.